Well, the hospital is Stephen Pribyl, who's with us today. And good morning, sir.
Good morning, Gordy. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Well, you got some exciting events coming up.
We sure do.
Namely a community open house for your new emergency room.
We do. We're going to be hosting the community on Thursday, August 3rd from 5 to 7 p.m. Happy to talk a little bit more about our new emergency department.
You have refreshments and giveaways, all sorts of things.
Tours, the whole thing.
You're pretty proud of it, I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is the culmination of a major effort by Allina, of course, to invest in our community. The planning for this started back in early 2015, and here it is, August of 2017, and we're ready to open.
Now, this was part of the agreement when Allina took over, right?
Yeah. Allina made a commitment to the community to invest in further enhancing healthcare in the community, and this is probably the signature investment as far as noticeable in that sense. It's roughly 16,000 square feet, and what I tell people, it's not a renovation. It's really building a new building attached to our old building, in generally the same area. It's on the southwest corner of the campus. Quite an undertaking given the slope on that side of the campus. What we wanted to do is bring the parking up to a little more level grade for people so they didn't have to walk up steps and so on. So we built a rather significant retaining wall on that southwest corner and brought in lots of fill and built out towards the south. And the design is called the core design, which means the staff all occupy a center. If you think of a racetrack, the staff workstations are all in the center of that racetrack. And then on either side, to the north and south, are 7 exam rooms. And on the west end are 2 state-of-the-art trauma rooms as well as the ambulance garage. And that's why they call it the core design, because the staff actually does their work away from the patients in this core. Each of the exam rooms has a door from the core into the exam room and then from an outer public hallway into the exam room, allowing a lot more privacy for our patients as they are roomed, and then staff enter from that center core area. Another feature that's a reality of the care that we need to provide these days is 3 of the rooms are called behavioral health rooms. And we want to make sure that the exam rooms are safe for our patients. So we literally have what I call a garage door that comes down and covers all of the wall-mounted stuff that you might otherwise have in an exam room. So the room is safe for patients, and hopefully then patients are in a better position to be taken care of. So we also are finishing, or have finished, a public hallway that will, for patients coming into the emergency department area, they don't have to go to the emergency department. Maybe they want to go into the hospital, and there's a public north-south hallway as well that will take them to the hospital.
Well, I'll get to see this on Thursday, 5 until 7. They're going to have those tours, refreshments, giveaways. We're going to talk more about the expansion at District 1, because I don't think this is the only expansion they're going to be doing, but we'll talk about that with Mr. Pribyl. And AM Minnesota continues. We're going to get that opening market report, a service of your KDHL Agri Boosters, and then I promise we'll give more details about what's happening. Food Northland Buildings. For quality post-frame construction, head to the website northlandbuildings.com. Stephen Pribyl is the Chief Executive Officer of District 1 Hospital. In fact, I was just thinking before the show today, the changes that you've seen since coming back to Faribault, and they're pretty significant.
Well, yeah, we've gone through a lot of change when I think about it as well. I'm arriving in late 2010, and like a lot of other leaders of organizations, you have a tendency to say, well, let's take a look at the horizon, let's take a look at the market, let's take a look at our capabilities. And so we did some extensive strategic planning that eventually led to the decision by the board of directors to affiliate or become part of Allina Health, which was, of course, effective January 1st of 2015. And with that came more changes, particularly, I'll say, internal. Hopefully our patients have experienced the same level of quality and safe care as always. I can't remember if I shared one time, Gordy, when I was here, before we became part of Allina, but in between that time after we had announced it, they changed the sign at the clinic upgrade it or update it. And we actually had a patient, we weren't part of Allina yet, but they dropped us a note and said, boy, your patient care has really gone up a notch since you became part of Allina. We weren't part of Allina then, they just changed the sign. So again, that speaks to the fact that we've always given high quality care. Since becoming part of Allina, and again you alluded to this earlier about the investment that Allina is making in our community, in our healthcare community, and I think about it, we've essentially rewired and re-equipped the hospital when it comes to the IT infrastructure, bringing it up to state-of-the-art information systems. And the primary driver on that is the fact that we also took advantage of the fact we're part of Allina and are part of the Allina electronic health record. And to make sure that runs well, you want to have the good infrastructure. In addition to the information systems infrastructure, we've done a fair amount of facilities upgrades besides this very noticeable now new emergency department. A lot of things that maybe the public just doesn't generally see. It's that mechanical infrastructure type of stuff. For example, we rewired all of the temperature control systems. They can actually detect the temperature of a specific room at District 1 Hospital up in Minneapolis at their control center. And already, through some of the electronic management of those systems, we're saving close to $20,000 a month on our utility bills. So think of your home thermostat where you can program it to change the temperature at certain hours. We're now able to do that. And so, as an example, my office is not air conditioned on the weekends because they don't expect I'm using it. So that, again, kind of behind the scenes type of change. Other investments have been in the area of medical equipment, new beds, new stretchers, and when I say stretchers, we're not talking about a couple of wooden broom handles and some web. We're talking about high-tech stretchers that move patients around and so on. In addition, in conjunction with our emergency department, we brought in a whole new, brand new imaging room. We call it a RAD room. And in fact, we're hoping the finishing touches will be done so that when the public comes in for the tour on Thursday, they'll actually get a chance to see this new state-of-the-art technology as well. So a lot of investments just in the last 2.5 years. In addition, becoming part of a larger healthcare system, we can take advantage of the best practice. So as an example, I meet regularly not only with all the Allina hospital presidents, but specifically with the community hospital presidents, New Ulm, Hastings, Cambridge, Buffalo, Owatonna, and we share best practices and kind of do the, well, what are you doing? And maybe we can mimic that or copy that to make things better for our patients. So lots of positive stuff.
So we talked about the behavioral care rooms,
Mm-hmm.
mental health.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of short in that area in this state.
Yes.
You said there are 3 designated behavioral rooms?
We designed, out of the 14 standard exam rooms, 3 are behavioral health, what we call safe rooms. I frankly am nervous that 3 won't be enough. There are times, because there are not enough inpatient psych beds in the state, that we end up holding patients until we can find that appropriate place for them. And so it's just something that all of the state of Minnesota is experiencing. It's not unique to Faribault by any means.
Do we have special rooms for mental health patients here locally?
No, we do not have inpatients, we'll call psych beds, which is a special unit. It's designed a special way to make sure the patients are safe and so on. Owatonna Hospital does, Regina in Hastings does, New Ulm does, but we don't. And it's not impossible that someday we wouldn't. It's something we have to look at. Part of it is we might be able to get, let's say, 10 beds, and sometimes that feel like that's kind of boiling the ocean for the need. There's a significant need. Allina is investing, as well as being an inpatient psychiatric care provider. Allina is investing on the primary care side, supporting the primary care physician with the right kind of talent around them to help those in need with mental health diseases and so on, and med management as it is. That way, a patient, if they have continuity of care with their primary care physician, are stable, and then we don't have need for the emergency department for an acute episodic event.
So if I suffered one of these incidents, I'd either go to Allina or the Twin Cities.
You could go wherever the bed is available. It's a state tracking system, and we participate in what's called Allina assessment and referral. So the doctor makes a diagnosis and determines that we don't have the capability locally to take care of the patient. Then it goes into this assessment and referral, and they assess the patient via telehealth and determine what kind of facility would be best for the patient. And they go out to the state tracking system and look for a vacant opening or an open bed. And
so it could end up in New Ulm.
It could end up in New Ulm. It could end up, we don't prefer this, of course, it could end up in Duluth. We've had patients end up in the Dakotas, sometimes for lack of enough beds in the state of Minnesota. It's a real challenge. It's getting a fair amount of play by the state legislation and in fact the federal government. Minnesota was selected as one of, I think, 6 states to pilot a couple of different concepts, specifically one being a more focused mental health clinic, a community clinic. And hopefully that pilot will show some positive results, and we'll get long-standing funding.
I remember in 1989 I got my first MRI. I was in a car accident, broke my clavicle in 8 places.
Wow.
So they were going to do an MRI. I had to go on the truck outside the hospital. We've come a long ways.
And yeah, we're very proud of the technology. I think our MRI in place has been there since, I say, the early part of the century, as I recollect. And what's amazing about that is you don't have to replace the whole unit to sustain technology, because it's so high tech. You come in and switch out a couple components. The magnet itself does not wear, and so we basically have a state-of-the-art MRI that you just keep upgrading along the way.
And I like the one where you don't have to go inside the tube.
Yeah, that we don't have that, but we screen carefully for those patients that might be particularly nervous about being in the tube. At this point, we work with the patients and hopefully can accommodate their needs otherwise.
Yeah, I had a knee, I fell on the ice a couple of years ago and my knee kept bothering me, so I kind of insisted an MRI because, I don't know how you can know something if you don't take a picture of it. Turns out the doctor was right. It wasn't, wasn't a tear. It ended up being a sprain or a strain on my meniscus, which is what they initially thought, which is, in some cases, the doctor said worse than a tear. Tear we could repair. This, you have to live with it for a while.
Well, when it comes to diagnostics, many providers, and of course I'm not, so I want to be careful in speculating, but many providers, like a car mechanic, will start with, let's rule out the simplest, let's rule out the least invasive, let's rule out that could possibly be the solution without overdoing the diagnostics.
Right.
And so it's a kind of a step it up process.
Well, it was like $1,000 for the MRI. So.
And there's that as well. And there, I think in our society, whether it's diagnostics or responding to direct consumer advertising for certain pharmaceuticals,
sure.
Many times a patient will come in, I'm told, and say, I want the purple pill because that advertising said that's what will help me. And our physicians are challenged to know what the limits or capabilities of that purple pill are, but also to teach and explain to the patient a different course of treatment. One of the common ones that happens is maybe a young mother believes the solution to her child's earache is antibiotics, and the challenge there, I'm told, is if you prescribe too many antibiotics, pretty soon they don't have an effect.
Yep.
And so again, our doctors want to start at the most, not the lowest level, but the most direct, simplest approach, and start to rule out anything significant.
But as I was getting ready for the show today, I was thinking how blessed we are here to have the kind of health care we have in Faribault, considering our proximity to the metro and to Rochester, a couple of medical hubs.
Yes. We are very fortunate, and I say this often, and I came here from Mayo Clinic Health System, and we've got Mayo Clinic Health System on our campus. They just finished a beautiful expansion project on our campus, and it is a true blessing in the sense of being in the center. I call it the center of the universe in southern Minnesota. It is practically equidistant from Faribault to St. Mary's in Rochester and to Abbott Northwestern in Minneapolis. And what I've found after growing up in southern Minnesota and returning is people are much more mobile than they used to be. And it's no big deal to drive to those locations. Yet we have high quality care here. Our Virginia Piper Cancer Institute is bringing cancer diagnostics and treatment to the local community. And our Dr. Vakalanka, who started with us almost a year ago now, is walking in the shoes of an icon in that regard, Dr. Bert Schwartz, but Dr. Vakalanka is extremely talented, knowledgeable, and experienced. And he's here 4 days a week, which Dr. Schwartz wasn't able to be because he had practices elsewhere. So that's one example. We've got Courage County Rehabilitation Institute. It's our physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and we want to expand those services for our community. I can remember once being injured when I was on active duty in the Air Force, and we didn't have all the capabilities we needed at that base, so I had to drive 45 miles to get to a physical therapist. Well, think about that. It was a back injury, and I'm crunched up in a car. Again, we've got those capabilities locally to take care of our community.
And not every place has that.
No. Healthcare is changing, and we could spend hours talking about what's happening at the federal or even the state level. And yeah, there are some communities that, for a variety of reasons, maybe it is a smaller population, and so how can you justify having all capabilities for all people? And so they might have less capabilities. I think in southern Minnesota, though, we're fortunate because most of our communities have healthcare facilities. We call it the I-35 corridor, and that's where I'm cheating a little bit because Northfield Hospital is about 6 miles off the interstate, but look at the capability of the Northfield Hospital and clinics. There's an Allina clinic in Northfield, Owatonna Hospital, Allina Hospital, but they partner with the Mayo Clinic Health System there, and then our opportunities here in Faribault. We're very fortunate.
Yeah, to have the offering of, as you mentioned, Mayo and Allina on the same campus. It's pretty unique.
Yeah, there's only 2 communities in the state or in the nation that offer that, and that's us and Owatonna that have Allina and Mayo on the same campus. So it's a big deal.
What, 15 miles apart?
Yep.
So you could almost argue that we're the healthcare hotbed right here.
Well, in a lot of ways we are. Again, other communities have their needs and capabilities, but we're kind of in that center place, and so it allows us to take advantage of capabilities all around us, and if we need to, send patients wherever their needs can be met the best.
But speaking of blessings, and you pointed out the cancer treatment here, the people I talk to, of course, am involved and have been for a number of years with the Relay for Life. That was so awesome that patients could get treatment here because, well, I haven't been through it, thank heavens. I hope I never have to go through it, but people I've talked to that have gone through cancer treatments, having to drive somewhere, be driven somewhere when you're undertaking chemotherapy, it's a whole lot better to do it locally.
Absolutely. And I call it, sometimes people have what I call it the parking ramp syndrome. And Dr. Schwartz was the one who talked with me when he was here and said, it's interesting. He would receive phone calls from residents of Faribault and say, can't I please come see you at your office at Abbott Northwestern? And it was as if when he's there, he's smarter or something. And Dr. Schwartz, his knowledge was mobile. It came with him. His connections to other specialists was mobile. It came with him. And yet we all naturally do this. If we're diagnosed with a significant diagnosis, we want to go where there is a full range. And I get that. But just because there's a parking ramp doesn't mean that there's such substance behind that parking ramp that local care can't provide the capability. And again, I think Virginia Piper Cancer Institute in Faribault is an example of that. We use the same protocols. We've got the same expertise. We have some very, very compassionate staff. Dr. Vakalanka, Amy Selly, the nursing staff. I mean, these people, I use a phrase too, neighbors, friends, and relatives, taking care of neighbors, friends, and relatives. And that means a lot to people, that there's a sense of familiarity and true, sincere caring.
It's big.
Yep.
Again, the expansion of the emergency room is the highlight this Thursday, 5 until 7.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have giveaways, refreshments, self-guided tours of the new area. Is this the end of the expansions?
Oh no, I would never say that's the end of the expansions. We're always, there's a project going on right now in the Allina clinic to add 10 more exam rooms, because we're fortunate enough to have 3 new surgeons, Allina employed surgeons, joining us this summer. So there's a project underway right now in the clinic to expand the clinic capability. And what we're doing is we're repurposing the old medical records room. So the old paper repository, the paper's all gone now, and so we're able to reuse that space for exam rooms. So we've got 3 new surgeons coming. Dr. Max Richardson is going to join Dr. Henry Bush in general surgery. Dr. Robert Yang, ear, nose, and throat specialist, is going to be joining Dr. Jeff Block in that specialty. And then Dr. Rafael Fernandez, an orthopedic surgeon, is going to be joining Dr. Brian Armitage as our be about a 1.6 orthopedic surgeon. That we're going to provide those capabilities right up on the healthcare campus.
Now, you said earlier there's 14
exam rooms back in the ED.
14 exam rooms
Yes.
for the ER.
Yep.
There used to be.
We currently, and we're in a bit of a constricted space because of the construction, but we're currently using 10 exam rooms, which are square footage smaller than the new ones, and 2 of the treatment areas have 2 beds in them, and it's all private rooms now in the new emergency department. So counting the beds, we might be close to 14 beds, but it's constricted in space. And in fact, this is going to give us a lot more comfort. In fact, one of the things that design features that caught my eye early on is the waiting room is relatively small. And you kind of go, oh, gee, that's not your typical emergency department waiting room, because whether we saw this in TV or just our personal experiences, there's always people waiting in the emergency department. Well, no, our intent is the patient comes in, is immediately registered, and immediately roomed, where then the clinical activity will commence in the room. So we'll want to minimize the amount of time that the patient is just waiting in the waiting room. And so we hope to be able to room everyone right away and keep the process flowing, and so that people have a comfortable and efficient experience.
Yeah, I can't remember. There wasn't a lot of room in there when my mom passed away in the ER in 2012. I seem to recall there was not a lot of room.
No. Well, to describe how old the old emergency department is, or it's current until next week, I was a patient in that emergency department in 1968. And I remember the paint, I remember the cinder block, and I remember the treatment room I was in, and it hasn't changed that much other than adding technology. So that goes back quite a few years that we've been trying to take care of patients in that area. Again, always providing highly safe, quality care, but somewhat under some restrictions as far as space.
The entrance now is at the front of the hospital.
Today, and that's
that
temporary.
Changes.
Yes, at 6 a.m. on August 8th. So it's Tuesday, August 8th. We'll open up the drive, the same drive that was the entrance to the emergency department back in 15, and patients will drive up a hill and park, and there's 20 plus parking spots, no steps, and they can enter into the beautiful new emergency department, effectively facing the same direction as they did a couple years ago. Because again, what we did is added on to that southwest side of the campus in the same general area. But we're going to then have to change the habits of the last couple of years and change signs bright and early on that Tuesday morning, so they still can get to the emergency department if they come through the main door. This is all going to be connected, all part of a public hallway system within the hospital. So.
All right. So again, that's Thursday, 5 until 7 in the evening. Self-guided tours. Got any ideas? Some of the giveaways?
You know,
a free MRI screening or something?
No, I don't think we'll be able to pull that off. I'm sure there will be goodies of all sorts.
Pens and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you recently retired, said you're going to retire. February, I believe you said, before we hit the airwaves, is your last time here.
This may be my last time, or
it might be your last time.
Might be, or I'd be happy to come back before. I've got 6 months to go.
Well, I'd love to get your take on the whole healthcare thing before you leave.
I would love to come back, Gordy, and talk about it. I've got a couple of I call it amateur theories after being in healthcare for 35 years. And I'd love to come and chat with you about that topic. And
because it's become a topic of difficulty for those in our nation's capital.
It is, and it's if we just think broadly, we spend in the United States more per capita on healthcare than any other nation in the world. And what's unfortunate, though, is nationally our outcomes are not leading the world. And so we've got to think about where our focus needs to be. Is it about spending money, or is it about doing the right thing?
Yeah. Well, again, Thursday, 5 until 7, folks. Everybody's invited.
Absolutely.
To tour the new emergency room, which has more than doubled in size.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be awesome. We are so blessed to have that kind of healthcare right here in the Faribault community. I know it's one of the reasons why I love living here. You're in tune to KDHLAM, Faribault, Minnesota.